I want to talk about the Cincinnati Bearcats for a minute, as the Bearcats, they improved to 13-0 on the season after a dominating performance in the conference championship game over the Houston Cougars Saturday night at Nippert Stadium. For the Cincinnati Bearcats, in this game, Derek Ritter, he played great. He had 190 passing yards. He went 11 of 17 passing, 3 touchdowns. Jerome Ford had an outstanding game. He had 18 carries for 187 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Alex Pierce, he got into the end zone for 1 touchdown. You had Tyler Scott. He caught a touchdown pass from Ritter in the first quarter. The Bearcats beat the Cougars 35-20. And Sunday, Luke Fickell and his team, they were selected to be a part of the college football playoffs. So the committee, they got UC at 4, Alabama at 1, Michigan at 2, Georgia at 3. So let's talk about the Bearcats making the college football playoff, shall we? I believe the committee got this right. And I'm happy that the Cincinnati Bearcats would have an opportunity to play in a college football playoffs later on this month. And I'm happy that they're going to get an opportunity to go up against Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide, because I believe the Cincinnati Bearcats, being the only undefeated team in the nation, having a 13-0 record, being one of those teams all year long who the committee and others throughout the nation had their questions about, because everybody had questions about UC all year long. Like, make no mistake about it. You look at the Bearcats this season, right? Earlier in the season, they went up against Navy. They beat Navy 27-20. So it was a close game. Committee had an issue with that. Then they played Tulane. They beat Tulane 31-12. But most people didn't believe that the Bearcats beat Tulane decisively. So you had week 10, they beat Tulsa 28-20. So most people felt like, hey, UC, they aren't dominating teams the way that we would like. They're not dominating teams like other teams are in other conferences. But see, I felt like the last 4 weeks, the Bearcats, they have dominated their opponents. Let's go back to week 11 against South Florida. The Bearcats beat South Florida 45-28. Week 12 at Nippert, the Bearcats beat SMU 48-14. Week 13 at East Carolina, the Bearcats, they beat East Carolina 35-13. And then I felt like watching the game Saturday evening at Nippert, although at one point the Cougars were beating the Bearcats 10-7, I thought the Bearcats had a dominating performance in the second half in the conference championship. They outscored the Cougars, the Bearcats that is, they outscored the Cougars 21-0 in the third quarter. And I thought that was the difference in the American Athletic Conference Championship game. So I thought the Bearcats, the way they were able to dominate the Cougars in the second half and how they were able to dominate their opponents the last 4 weeks overall, I think that's why you saw the committee give the Bearcats an opportunity to make the college football playoffs and play in the Cotton Bowl against the Alabama Crimson Tide December 31st for an opportunity to go to the championship game. So I thought Luke Fickell and his coaching staff and the players, they have put themselves in a position to compete for a national championship. And I am so happy for the University of Cincinnati and the Bearcats football program being in this position. Luke Fickell has done an outstanding job as head coach of the Cincinnati Bearcats. I remember at one point, the Bearcats being a basketball school. You remember when they had Bob Huggins, Kenyon Martin. I mean, I'm thinking about Kenny Satterfield, Steve Logan. I mean, Melvin Levitt, the helicopter. That was his nickname. This was a basketball school. So the way that Luke Fickell was able to turn around the Cincinnati Bearcats football program and have them in a position to compete for a national championship speaks to the caliber of coach that Luke Fickell is. And I can't say enough about the job that he has done since he's been the head coach of the Cincinnati Bearcats. He is 48-14, and he has a 29-9 record in the AAC. And I think Luke Fickell is one of the best coaches in college football. And I believe the only way Luke Fickell leaves Cincinnati is if Ryan Day decides to go to the NFL, because the Chicago Bears, they're going to fire Matt Nagy by season's end. At some point, Matt Nagy is going to be fired. I think the Bears should get on the phone. They should call Ryan Day and offer him a big contract to come to the NFL to coach Justin Fields. And I think Justin Fields and Ryan Day will compete in the NFC North for future seasons to come with the Chicago Bears. That's what I would do if I'm the Chicago Bears. If that happens, I think that's a job that Luke Fickell would seriously consider if it opened up. I think there are two teams that Luke Fickell would leave the Bearcats for. And one of those teams already named their head coach in Marcus Freeman. That's the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They named Marcus Freeman their coach moving forward after Brian Kelly left for LSU. So I think those were the two jobs that Luke Fickell would leave Cincinnati for, Notre Dame and Ohio State. So keep an eye on that. If Ryan Day decides to leave Ohio State for the NFL, I think there's a possibility that Luke Fickell would leave Cincinnati for Ohio State. But that's the only team I could see Luke Fickell leaving the Cincinnati Bearcats for. I think he's done an outstanding job at building up this program to be a top program in college football. Again, I think you can make a legitimate argument that UC is a football school now. It really, really is. It's a football school. They had a 13-0 record this year, 8-0 in the AAC. Last year, they finished 9-1. They lost in the bowl game to Georgia, and then they finished 6-0 in the AAC last year. So they won the AAC title for a second consecutive season. And the first year, it didn't start off well for Luke Fickell. First year in 2017, 4-8 record, 2-6 in the AAC. 2018, they improved. 11-2 overall record, 6-2 in the AAC. 2019, 11-3 record, 7-1 in the AAC. Again, his overall record since being the head coach of the Cincinnati Bearcats, 48-14, with a 29-9 record in the AAC. He has turned this program around, and he has recruits now wanting to come to Cincinnati and play football. And one of the recruits that came to Cincinnati that previously played for Alabama, I believe, is Jerome Ford. And Jerome Ford is a key player for the Bearcats offense. In this game, in the AAC title game, Jerome Ford, he was named the most valuable player. He had 18 carries for 187 rushing yards. He averaged over 10 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns on the night. So he's one of the players offensively who has a major impact on the Bearcats being able to move the football at a high level. But I like the way this Bearcats team is built. You know, they got weapons like Alex Pierce. I like their dynamic duo at tight end. When you got Wiley and you got Leonard Taylor and, you know, you got Derek Ritter back there throwing that football, dual threat quarterback. Like, he can make plays with his legs in the open field. He's one of the most mobile quarterbacks in college football, and he's going to go on to the NFL level. So Luke Fickell was going to have to bring in a young quarterback to trust in this Bearcats system. But I think the Bearcats have one of the most promising programs moving forward in college football. And defensively, I love their defense. Like, I think Ahmad Gardner, he's one of the best defensive backs in the college football. I like Kobe Bryant as well. I think he's a dynamic defensive back. So between Kobe Bryant and Ahmad Gardner, those are two cornerbacks that it's hard to throw against. Like, it's hard for opposing teams to throw the ball against this Bearcats defense, and that's because of Kobe Bryant and Ahmad Gardner. But then you look at them at the linebacker position. Joel DeBlanco, he had the interception in the second half for the Bearcats in the AAC title game. So I like this Bearcats team. I'm going to talk about the Bearcats and their matchup against the Crimson Tide in future shows to come before the game on New Year's Eve. But I think the nation is sleeping on this Bearcats team. And I think everyone's going to be shocked when they look up in the fourth quarter and we got a competitive football game between the Bearcats and the Crimson Tide. I can't wait for that matchup. But I'm going to get my predictions for that show on future shows to come.